Hi, everyone. We'll give it a few minutes here for people to join. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon or this evening. If you could please use the chat to introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining from today, that would be great. And we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. All right, well, in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Holly Darrow. I'm a project lead at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and I will be your host for today. So thank you for joining us for this webinar co-hosted by the Clean Energy Solutions Center and the 21st Century Power Partnership, both initiatives of the Clean Energy Ministerial on Uruguay's Power Sector Decarbonization Action Plan. If we go to the next slide. So this is our agenda for today. We've just got some short introductions of the two different initiatives that are hosting this webinar, as well as an introduction to the webinar itself, and then right into our lovely presentation for today. Next slide. Before we get started, just some Zoom housekeeping rules. So this webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you following the session. You're automatically muted upon joining in throughout the webinar, so please use the chat feature to add comments and share your input, and use the Q&A function at the bottom of your toolbar to ask questions. If you have any technical issues, please use the chat feature to message Sophie Schrader. She'll be able to help you with that. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little button here that says Show Captions. You can also toggle on translation on and off. So if you're interested in having translation to your language, please do that to translate your captions. You can adjust your audio through the audio settings. If you're having any issues, you can also dial in with the information found in your Zoom registration email. And then finally, we will be launching a survey after the event, and we would appreciate if you would fill that out. Next slide. So I'm just going to briefly touch on our speakers today, and then I'll pass it over to them. Next slide. So joining us today, we have Sandra Dickinson from the U.S. Department of Energy, which is a co-lead of the Clean Energy Solutions Center, as well as the 21st Century Power Partnership, as well as Andre Osta and Celeste Elroy from Uruguay's Ministry of Industry, Energy, and Mining, who will be doing our technical presentations today. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Sandra to introduce the Clean Energy Solutions Center and the 21st Century Power Partnership.
Thanks so much, Holly, and pleasure to virtually see or meet everybody here today. Very excited for this important webinar. So as Holly said, my name is Sandra Dickinson, and I'm with the U.S. Department of Energy, Office of International Affairs, where I oversee the Clean Energy Ministerial, or CEM, engagements and efforts on behalf of the United States. My colleague Aaron Ng is also sort of our CEM lead, so you might have seen him on some of these events in the past. Today, I'm pleased to give a brief introduction to the Clean Energy Solutions Center, as well as the 21st Century Power Partnership, two work streams that are co-hosting this webinar. For those who are not familiar with these work streams, these are just two of the 20 initiatives under the CEM, which includes 29 member countries working to rapidly increase the deployment of clean energy technologies globally. So I'll go ahead and start with the Clean Energy Solutions Center. Next slide. So this slide gives a great overview of the Clean Energy Solution Center, which is co-led by the governments of Australia and the United States, and it's operated by NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. The whole idea of the Clean Energy Solution Center is to equip governments with the capacity to design and adopt policies and programs to deploy clean energy technologies at home. We do this primarily in 3 ways. Next slide. So the first is, and I'm going quickly through these because I know there's a lot of exciting things to talk about. So the first of the 3 ways is the Ask an Expert service. This service is available to any government that needs additional capacity to support a clean energy question or policy issue, and it's available free of charge to developing countries. The second way is through training and capacity building. And finally, the Clean Energy Solution Center Resource Library not only includes past webinars, but other reports, policy briefs, and journal articles, making up about 1,500 resources that help support the rapid deployment of clean energy globally. I'm glad we're able to share best practices and lessons learned from our Uruguayan colleagues on webinars like today's and further disseminate them through the Clean Energy Solution Center. Next slide. All right, so now we're moving again, going quickly, moving through over to the 21st Century Power Partnership, which is another mechanism in the SEM toolbox that helps its members and participating governments deploy clean energy. So next slide. So the 21st Century Power Partnership, or 21CPP, is a multi-country platform that fosters public-private collaboration to accelerate the transition to clean, efficient, secure, and reliable and cost-effective power systems. 21CPP helps countries coordinate across sectors and systems through advancing best practices in power system planning, building, and operation. We do this mainly through peer learning, knowledge sharing, and technical assistance. Next slide. On knowledge sharing, a key effort of 21CPP's annual thought leadership is the annual thought leadership report, which covers various power system transformation topics and challenges across the world. You'll see on this slide a whole array of some of the amazing reports that are publicly available on the 21CPP website, which you can access through the QR code on the screen, or I'm sure someone will share the link in the chat if that is of interest. Next slide. And then what's, we're excited to talk about today is that 21CPP also supports country level policy and supports the country level action plans that that are country-led and lay out strategic priorities for power sector decarbonization that are specific to every country's existing goals. So when countries join 21CPP to develop these action plans, they also join a community that is sharing these practices and helps implement power systems goals. So this is a few of the first cohort. Next slide. And then we have the second cohort. So today you'll hear from Uruguay, a member of the second cohort of countries, on its journey and lessons learned in developing the National Action Plan. You are also, for those who have not already signed up, we are definitely encouraged to sign up and join the third cohort or a future cohort to develop an action plan for your country. With all of that, I thank you for your time. I went through these introductions quite quickly because I want to save as much time as possible for the substance of this conversation. So we'll turn it back over to you, Holly.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra. We can go to the next slide, and I'm just hopping on quickly to turn it over to our Uruguayan colleagues. So go ahead, Celeste and Andre.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to present the Uruguay Action Plan and speaking for power sector decarbonization. Next slide, please. I will start with the main regulatory milestones. In 1997, the Energy Market Law established the electricity markets, and by 2002, the law was fully regulated. I'm going to describe this framework regulatory. This framework established that the wholesale market operate competitively, both in generation and consumption phases, with shared use of the transmission system under an open access regime. In Uruguay, it is important a state-owned company who holds a legal monopoly on transmission and distribution activities that are regulated. In particular, the regulator calculates access charge and the central government approves them. A central operator is responsible for managing the market, coordinating its participants, and balance supply and demand. And generation is centrally dispatched by the system operator based on an economic merit order. I mean, from lowest marginal cost plant to highest marginal cost plant. This general regulatory framework was approved before the country starts with the matrix transformation. In 2010, Uruguay started a decarbonization effort with broad political support. This is a relevant element in this process. Focus on renewables. This included wind, biomass, and solar, complementing hydro resources. Renewables were introduced through competitive actions, assigning capacity to cost-effective sources. As a result of this process, measures were developed to incorporate electricity generation from biomass, wind, and finally solar in these years. These actions were organized by the state-owned company, UTE, where firms build power capacity with a fixed levelized price, long-term price, expressed in US dollar per megawatt hour in real terms. To get a general idea, the lowest wind price of the action held in 2012 was $62 per megawatt hour. To achieve these prices, the good credit rating of the Uruguayan government was important due to the relevance of financing costs in long-term investment prices. And also, the broad political support is necessary to achieve these prices because this support generates credibility and confidence to investors and banks to achieve low premium risk. As you know, the capital cost rate is formed adding a free risk rate and adding additional premium risk. So a broad political support and a good credit rating of the government are important elements to achieve low premium risk and so low financing costs. The next slide, please. Since the general regulatory framework was designed for a hydrothermal power system, it was necessary to make regulatory change. Some of the aspects of this regulation change are recognition or fill capacity to renewable sources, mechanisms to manage curtailment. It was necessary to design a mechanism, a fair and transparent mechanism, rules to dispatch renewable sources. These sources are base load in the central dispatch. So these sources are dispatched at a zero cost, variable cost. tariffs that recognize the hourly cost, and other incentive as commercial discount on this tariff to promote load shifting from peak hours to off-peak hours, as well as to increase demand through electrifying uses. The next one, please. To complement supply actions, an energy efficiency policy was implemented to change demand, to complement supply and demand, and avoid new power plants through energy efficiency. So, National Energy Efficiency Law was approved in 2009, and it was one of the first in Latin America. This law established the creation of Energy Efficiency Trust Fund. This fund is financed by the contribution of state-owned company involved in energy activities, a national energy efficient plan with a national energy saving target, and energy efficiency certificates, which provide monetary award to energy efficiency, measuring all sectors according to the energy efficiency saving. The fund was established in 2012 to finance the energy efficiency certificates, the national energy efficiency labeling system, and several other energy efficient programs. The first National Energy Efficient Plan established broad policy action and specific sectoral action to promote the efficient reduction of the national energy demand and achieve the national energy saving targets. The next one. Another important component of the action plan is a general regulatory framework for the regulated prosumer. A prosumer is defined as a customer who owns a supply made and measured by the distributor that generates electrical energy for its own consumption. The injected electrical energy is remunerated at the hourly spot price, which reflects the hourly marginal cost. And the prosumer pays a tariff with charge that differentiate the generation cost and the cost associated with transmission, distribution, and generation backup facility. This tariff reflects an energy charge with is based on generation cost, expressed in Uruguayan currency per kilowatt hour, and a capacity charge which reflect transmission, distribution, and generation backup facility, which is expressed in Uruguayan currency per kilowatts. Next one. Well, approximately 60% of carbon dioxide emission in the energy sector come from the transport sector. So, action to decarbonize the transport sector include reducing emission from the energy sources used and change in mode of transport. Then it was developing the following actions. An interinstitutional lines of work was developed, and in particular, an institutional group on energy efficiency in transportation was created. In this group participates in ministries of energy, transport, environment, economy, road safety agency, budget bureau, local governments. And in electric mobility discussion group, user, importers, wholesalers association, manufacturer, transport-related chambers, academy, and any related agent. It is necessary to have a broad perspective on the participation of stakeholders who can contribute to making the defined action plan effective and efficient. So it was the perspective in all this interinstitutional group. Besides, other aspects were buying and operating electric vehicle incentives and training, research and development, dissemination, and events. The next one, please. This decarbonization transport sector action plan implied infrastructure development, a charging infrastructure development. So in this was relevant the participation of the state-owned utility. It was defined a charging network based on a charger every 50 kilometers. AC chargers network nationwide, DC fast charging, and public charging network from private owners. This is still incipient. And about regulation topics, were defined minimum technical requirement for chargers, guidance on the condition for providing public charging services, economic incentive for public access DC fast charging developed by private initiative, energy efficiency liability for vehicles, and a sustainable mobility trust for public transport. And you can see in the charts the fast development of the charging network. Yes. The next one, please. Another component that this component is important to company access demanding market from an environmental perspective. This component is based on a renewable energy certification. These certificates are an accreditation mechanism in electronic format that ensure that a given number of megawatt hours of electricity produced in a given period have been generated from renewable sources. So the companies can certificate in the market to access their products. The allocation of certificate per source is calculated from cross-reference generation, import, and export data with the customer consumption data. And UTE, the state-owned company involved in electricity activity, as well as other markets, provide consumption data for the allocation to final consumer. Renewable energy certificates are registered on Energy Web blockchain, called the Energy Web chain. And this open source public blockchain is derived from the Ethereum blockchain technology. So it is a component that is very important to Uruguayan company can access to demanding markets. The next one, please. Well, and recently, the Uruguayan government issued a green bond whose return is linked to environmental indicators. Yes, this was an innovative measure, yes, and it aligns Uruguayan sovereign financing strategy with its climate and nature conservation objectives, based on the commitment made in the Paris Agreement. It outlines Uruguay's sustainable strategic priority and set targets for key performance indicators linked to the evolution of GHG emission intensity and the area of native forest. These were the two lines linked to environmental indicators. And the performance targets are based on the quantitative targets set by Uruguayan in its indice. The next one, please. Well, this is a general presentation of the different action lines. And now I'm going to present the main results of this action plan. The positive impact of the transformation of the electricity sector are observable in every dimension. In just 10 years, you can see in the chart on the left, from 2013 to 2023, Uruguay practically doubled its generation capacity by installing renewable technologies. As a result of the incorporation of this asset, it is possible to ensure a participation of more than 90% of indigenous renewable sources in the electricity markets, 97% in a year of average hydropower. This percentage varies on hydrological condition, because as you can see in the chart, hydro capacity is still important in the Uruguayan system, but Uruguay electricity matrix reached 92 renewable even in the year with the lowest hydro condition on record. That was 2023. And you can see in the chart below the share of the generation by source. You can see that thermal fossil power plant generation was 8%, still in the year with the lowest hydro condition on record. Yes. Returning to the graph on the left, our planning studies results in the solar photovoltaic capacity will be higher, very higher in the future. Nowadays, the wind capacity, the relationship between wind capacity and solar capacity is 2 megawatts of wind capacity per 1 megawatt of solar capacity. 5 megawatt wind capacity per 1 megawatt solar capacity. And in the future, the optimal expansion plan will be 2 megawatts of wind capacity per 1 megawatt of solar capacity. With respect to with thermal power plants, the fossil fuel generation source in the Uruguayan system is a backup. It's a backup against dry years, and we consider these sources as an insurance against extreme events or high impact, low probability events. The next one, please. Well, in this chart, we can see the geographical dispersion of the generation plants. You can see in the chart on the left the evolution of the geographically dispersion. So nowadays, the Uruguayan electricity system has gone from being a centralized and inflexible hydrothermal system to a geographical distribution system throughout the country, adding wind, solar, and biomass waste generation to the historical power plants. In addition to the development of this expansion plan, the transmission system has been reinforced in order to make the system more robust. So the robustness of the system has been increased through distributed generation and the reinforcement of transmission lines. So this matrix transformation has increased the grid cost and has reduced the generation cost. In balance, the total cost has been reduced, as we will see next one. The next one, please. Well, Uruguay changed its role from a net electricity importer to net electricity export. You can see in the charts the relevance of exports in respect to imports in the last years. No? Uruguay has a very relevant international interconnection with Brazil and Argentina. And as a result of the transformation of the electricity generation sector and the regional interconnection infrastructure with Brazil, Uruguay has become a net exporter of electricity since 2013 in years of average rainfall. If we model the expansion plan without electricity export and with electricity export, include electricity export, result in that renewable sources are must be incorporated 3 years before than planning without export. So export are revenue sources for renewable generation. The next one, please. Well, from the global environmental point of view, Uruguay has achieved a substantial reduction in the GHG emission factor of the system associated with its internal demand, reaching an average of 44.4 ton carbon dioxide per gigawatt hour in the last decade. You can see it in the graph, the reduction of carbon dioxide. And so the energy policy implemented in the country has also become an important environmental policy. On the one hand, it has enabled a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by minimizing the use of fossil fuels in the electricity matrix. At the same time, electricity generation from biomass has enabled the recovery of almost 30% of industrial and agro-industrial waste. So there are a strong relationship between energy policy and environmental policy. The next one, please. From an economic point of view, the matrix transformation results in lower expected system generation cost and reduced cost variability. And you can see it in the graph, the reduce of cost variability. In this graph, you have annual variability of demand sourcing cost in US dollars. And you can see that before the transformation matrix, this cost variability was high, very high, because it depends on the hydrological conditions. So nowadays, in expected value, the cost has been reduced, but the dispersion of this cost has been reduced too. Part of the benefit obtained has been transferred to tariff, and an indicator is that the residential tariff has been reduced by 30% in real terms. So the transformation of the electricity sector has been additionally economically convenient for both the system and the users. It is very important that users can see these benefits to citizens support the policy. The next one. Here in the charts above, you can see the share of multi-time rate residential customers. And you can see that in the last years, this share has increased in an important way, reaching this customer almost 20% of residential customers. And the tariff, the rate of these customers has been reduced in real terms. So especially in the last years, with an important real reduction of the rates. So as I mentioned before, from an economic point of view, the thematic transformation has been convenient to users too. The next one. Well, with respect to prosumer development, we can see in the graph the increase of these customers, especially in commercial sector. This sector is the most active in this consume modality, representing 56% of the total of these customers. And another important element is that solar micro generation account of all of 99% of the total. So this technology is dominant in this sector. The next one, please. Well, I'm going to talk about challenges of the matrix transformation. Uruguay has an atypical GHG emission profile due to its production matrix, with a strong participation in the economy of the primary sector, mainly livestock. So, despite the effort already made to decarbonize the electricity matrix, some sectors are still challenging. These sectors that present the main opportunities are transport and industry. So this is the sector identified to focalize the main efforts to complete the decarbonization. The next one. One important challenge related to industry is the green hydrogen. After a process of analysis and exchange with relevant actors at the national and international level, stakeholders concluded that Uruguay has very good conditions for the development of green hydrogen and derivatives. This is due to Uruguay's large amount of renewable energy sources and biogenic carbon dioxide, as well as its institutional stability and strong democracy. And institutional stability and strong democracy allow to create broad political support that is very important to long-term investments, to create credibility and confidence to investors and banks, to reduce the financing cost and so the total cost. It is based on this conclusion that the present roadmap to 2040 is proposed. And in the maps, you can see in the first one, you can see the wind capacity or potential of Uruguay. Then the solar photovoltaic capacity potential and the carbon dioxide biogenic availability. So Uruguay has large amount of renewable energy sources, and in this condition is based the roadmap. The next one, please. The roadmap for green hydrogen and its derivative foresees is developing in 3 phases. The first phase aim to learn from the development of the first pilot projects, specifically the development of missing regulations, the planning on infrastructure to be developed, and dialogue with the community that will receive the project. The second phase is initiating large-scale production of hydrogen and derivatives, followed by a third phase in which the development of new export infrastructure allows for the incorporation of new derivatives for export. And this is the timing of the phases. So nowadays we are in the first phase. The next one, please. Another challenge is interoperability. It is related to electric vehicles. So the public charging network has yet to develop in Uruguay. There is an ever-growing increase in the electric vehicle sales. There are already public and private actors, so the interoperability service manager role has become especially relevant. This relevance is based on minimizing communication problems, compatibility problems, avoiding bad user experience with multiple charging apps, payment methods, and among others. And regulation must accompany the change and innovation that are being processed. Yes, in an environment of high uncertainty. So it is an important challenge to increase electricity demand, and especially in the hours where there are a high renewable resources availability. The next one. And finally, other challenge is energy storage, especially battery energy storage system. The key activities for this challenge are load studies and battery energy storage system modeling. We need to know how to model this technology in our planning studies. Technology diffusion, awareness among stakeholders, and regulatory framework development. The stakeholders need transparent and defined rules to make investment in this technology. And we need to study if this technology is an alternative to use energy surpluses. So we need to find a roadmap for the Uruguayan case for this technology. And at the end, I would like to share with you an additional challenge, which I don't put in the presentation, is the design of future long-term contracts. In Uruguay, some people criticize the speed of the transformation of the matrix because it caused unexpected PPA prices due to the drop in the technology prices. So this is a topic to analyze for the future. And as we have a non-urgent current situation from security of supply and cogeneration, this situation allows to think future decision considering the learning and knowledge accumulated in the transformation matrix. So the expected reduction in photovoltaic solar energy lead us to consider introducing certain change in the pricing dynamic of contract, shifting from fixed prices to variable prices. This implies rethinking the allocation of price risks between generator and consumer, because the strategy defined by Uruguay was allocate the price risk to consumer. But in future, with a situation non-urgent from security supply perspective, we can analyze the advantage and disadvantage of risk allocation. So well, we have gone through a learning curve, and now we have to take advantage of it. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you to Celeste as well. I can see that she's been answering some questions here in the Q&A. So maybe just real quick to touch on a question that Celeste has answered, but just in case we have some folks who are just listening in, which is a question asked on how the U.S. private sector can get involved. And I think even to make that more broad, what is really the role of international cooperation in helping Uruguay to achieve your decarbonization goals? If you want to maybe speak a little bit to that.
Well, private investors are very necessary to green hydrogen development, because this project need a high amount of investment. So private and international sector are very necessary to developing this, to contribute to this challenge, this current challenge of Uruguay to decarbonize completely the matrix.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're seeing that in a lot of countries. And Andre, I guess since you're already touching on green hydrogen, I'm curious if there are any industries you see as being early adopters for green hydrogen. And we also have a question in the chat as to whether green hydrogen will be kind of a supplement to, other renewable sources that you guys are already using.
Excuse me, I don't understand clearly.
No problem. Do you want me to speak the question again, or Celeste, do you understand?
Sorry, Holly, could you repeat?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because there was some background noise.
Yes.
No problem. Sorry. I'm wondering if there are any industries that you guys see as being early adopters of green hydrogen. And then whether the question from the chat is whether green hydrogen will be used kind of as a supplement for other renewable energy sources that you're already using as part of the generation mix.
Okay, thank you. I understand. Yes, fundamentally as a storage energy, and to follow the renewable variability sources. So it is an interesting technology that we see in the future play an important role to have a robust system.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of playing that grid stabilization role. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. I think also to touch on a question here from the Q&A, or I guess a couple questions from the Q&A. There are a couple questions that have touched on different financing mechanisms. And I know, Andre, throughout your presentation, you kind of touched on that Uruguay is also thinking about financing as you're thinking about, these different technological ways to decarbonize the power sector. You're also thinking about the financing mechanisms to do so. And so there are a couple different questions here on, if there's a role for market coupling, carbon credits, or different types of multi-part tariffs. And so if you want to just kind of elaborate the different financing mechanisms that Uruguay is thinking about.
Yes, in the renewable sources funding were relevant long-term contracts with a counterpart with a good credit rating. So this allow to fix low prices for that moment and make project bankable. This is very important that project be bankable because almost 70% of the capital structure provided by banks financing. So the bankable characteristic of the project was very relevant in the transformation matrix.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also something we're seeing as being, really critical for countries is to kind of create these project pipelines for bankable projects to be able to then approach financiers. Another question to touch on, and I'm not sure if you touched on it in your presentation, is how Uruguay is working with local governments to, implement subnational projects or policies to help meet these national decarbonization goals. And apologies, I am hearing that a little bit that my audio is a bit fuzzy. Did you get that whole question?
There is a noise that I can't understand well.
Okay, apologies. I think it is my headphones. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Perfect.
No.
Okay, great. I'm just curious as to how Uruguay has been approaching local government policies or subnational policies, how you're working with subnational or local governments to be able to help meet these national decarbonization targets.
These targets are nationwide goal, and local governments participate actively in target related to waste. So because Uruguay is a small country, so the general targets are defined with a national perspective, but the relationship between national and local government is very important with respect to construction permissions of the projects and environmental permission of the countries. So in this area, in this topic, the relationship between national and local government are very important. And for this reason is very relevant a broad political support of this target, action plan, and strategy. That all parts contribute to the same action plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Andre, you touched on something there that local governments also play a role in how Uruguay's, decarbonization of the power sector is intertwined with your environmental regulations. Can you elaborate a little bit on how kind of the action plan that you guys have put together navigates that relationship between decarbonizing the power sector and Uruguay's policies towards environmental protection?
Yes, in local governments area is very important waste targets, and one of the environmental indicator of the green bond that it was related to local forests. The curve of the forest are native forest, and for this it is necessary to define a special area that care this these environmental geographically distributed areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think yeah, the role of local governments there is really instrumental, right? You're talking about people who are very close to those environmental areas and have a strong relationship and stewardship with those areas geographically. I think just one final question here, and then we'll wrap up. And I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on, Uruguay has clearly a very strong relationship with hydropower generation. You guys have obviously a very robust network of hydropower. Can you just talk a little bit more about how, the actions you're taking with, other types of renewables and energy efficiency are helping to bolster your hydropower against extreme weather events or other types of events that may affect hydropower generation?
Well, the hydropower generation potential in Uruguay is 0. So the hydropower capacity will be constant in the next year. So to increase the renewable sources share of the matrix, it is necessary to incorporate non-conventional renewable resources. And for a cost-effective reason, our planning studies indicate that solar photovoltaic is the main sources to develop in the next years. Nowadays, we have 5 megawatts of wind capacity per 1 megawatt of solar capacity, and the optimal structure would be 2 megawatts of wind capacity by 1 megawatt of solar capacity. So in the next years, the solar photovoltaic sources will be dominant. Returning to hydropower plant, nowadays hydropower plants are very important to manage the intermittence of wind, because these plants have speed turbines and allow to have a fast response to wind variability. So hydropower is a complement very important to the operation of the system nowadays.
Oops, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself there. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point. And especially in the role of those kind of feasibility studies and assessing, which renewable energy sources are gonna kind of best contribute to diversifying, Uruguay's matrix with hydropower. We're coming to the end here, so I just want to say thank you so much to Andre for presenting. Thank you to Celesta for responding to a lot of our questions there in the Q&A. I know that Celeste put some contact information in the chat, and then obviously you guys, there are some links to the 21st Century Power Partnership and the Clean Energy Solutions Center. You're welcome to reach out to us anytime, and thank you for joining us today. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.